Paranormal Road has been brought to you by EVP Mediums. Visit us at evpmediums.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Exploring unknown regions of our reality.
And she looks out and sees these lights in the sky and these different patterns drifting like they were going to land.
Examining the depths of human perception.
I remember when I was awake and I realized I was awake, I started to sort of scan the room and I realized that something was wrong.
Pursuing the elusive and unseen.
Electronics started acting up, ceased to work, overheated.
You have just entered a road of wondrous mystery.
And so when we get around this bend in the road and this group of trees, we look up in the sky and there's this craft, and it is huge.
A place where sometimes our darkest terrors dwell.
I've never seen anything like this, and instantly I could feel the fear.
You've just turned on to the Paranormal Road.
And welcome to Season 3 of Paranormal Road. I'm Dave Hensley, your host.
And I'm Randy Kessler, your co-host.
Wow, Randy. Season 3 already.
What an unusual summer this has been.
Yeah, very. And unfortunately, we're off about 3 weeks late in getting Paranormal Road up and running, but it's been just that kind of summer.
Let's just blame it on that whole coronavirus thing.
Yeah, that's it.
The whole rest of the world screwed up over it. Why can't we be?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, equal rights, though.
Yeah, podcast rights.
Yeah, exactly. We have a jam-packed show for you tonight, and we're going to start off with a little bit. Yes, we're going to bring up Sean Akers again. That's because we spent every single weekend there from May through.
We couldn't do anything else.
Yeah, to October. Yeah, you're right. We couldn't do anything else. There was no fair. There was no festivals. No Bigfoot conference.
But we did get to do something we enjoy with people that we enjoy being with, and it was overall a really good summer.
Yes, it was.
It went way too fast.
Yeah, we had invited Amy Boo out and Shane Grove and the crew from the Shadows podcast, and we just thought we'd have an informal get-together somewhat, and they came out and camped for the weekend, and talking Bigfoot, of course. And they did a night expedition into the woods, and something very unusual and bizarre happened, which Amy will be telling you about a little bit later. As far as my experience with anything creepy, Bigfooty, paranormal at the campground.
It's always Bigfooty with Dave.
Yeah. Literally nothing up until the end. In May, a couple campers in the morning walked by and said, "Hey, did you hear the screaming last night?" I'm like, "Hell no. I took NyQuil and I was out like a light." So I missed what they heard in May. But the weekend after the Bigfooters, now that was weird because that weekend was so hot and it was very calm and quiet there. But the weekend, it was 1 or 2 weeks after that. My daughter and son came and camped out with my grandson, Ollie, and we took a walk. And what happened was really bizarre. But that Friday morning, when I got up to have coffee, I heard a tree knock at about 4 in the morning. And that's the first time I heard anything, like I said, all summer long. And then that Saturday when we took the walk, we walked down by the pond. And it was me, Randy, Megan, Charlie, and Ollie. And the pond's in the wood lines. It's just over the hill and at the beginning of the woods. And I heard a whistling coming from the woods. Now, I stopped, but nobody else heard it.
No, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, and I think at first he thought I was just doing that for Ollie, to get them all excited. I'm like, no, I'm really hearing a whistling. I heard it.
Like, please, I don't want to hear this.
Yeah. Well, it stopped, And at that point, Randy decided to make a quick exit, and he's like, I'm out of here. My wine glass is empty.
I did a Jason. I said, I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be back. And then I never came back.
So we continued to walk, and there's a whole grove of quite a few pawpaw trees in the campground. What? You don't know what pawpaw trees are? Well, you have to look it up because it's too much to get into. We're not going to do
this whole episode on pawpaw trees, but they are real.
I'll tell you what, though, whoever named that tree pawpaw to be smacked. But so I decided that, hey, let's go down there, and I was going to show my son and daughter where the pawpaw trees were. And at that time of the year, they're starting to bear their fruit. And there was a stick, a good-sized stick. I said, hey, Chuck, I said, pick up that stick, and I said, crack that tree, do a tree knock as loud as you can, hit it as hard as you can. And he did it really good, really loud. And we stood there and nothing. Now, at this time, it's getting really dark down there in the canopy of the woods, and looking straight into it, it's almost black. And I said, do another. He hits the tree, and this, like, coming through the woods, you could hear it coming through the tree line, the tops of the trees, this, I don't know, big stick, log, I don't know, but it hit a tree near where Charlie was doing the tree knock, and it made a loud crack noise as it hit that tree. And I'll tell you, I feel like I'm a really bad grandparent because Megan picked up Ollie and she gasped and said, okay, Dad, that's enough. And here Charlie and I are walking towards it. I was just so drawn into it. And I'm like, that can't be. There's no way. And Chuck and I were talking about it. He's like, Dad, that came through the trees. I said, yeah, I know, vertical. And then we heard this. The only way I could describe it is if like a Godzilla or, I don't know, a giant dinosaur pounded its foot on the ground, and it was like, boom. Then I got scared. All right. That unnerved me. I'm like, okay, it's time to go. And we left at that point. But that was just unreal to experience something like that. So, yes, this episode is going to be about the glowing red eyes and other experiences from the summer.
It was pretty cool, actually, to have Amy out there and the crew from In the Shadows and the group that went out, too. It's kind of different, I guess. The campground, when we first came there and started talking ghost talk and Bigfoot, everybody thought we were like those strange people that they want to stay away from.
The paranormal weirdo guys.
Yeah. And then when the group came and Amy Lou came, people started coming around and like hanging out and talking about it. And then when Amy decides she's going to go into the woods, there was people from the whole campground wanting to go and walk those woods and look for Bigfoot. So it was kind of neat. It went from our interest into the campground's interest to go back and look in those woods.
And it's amazing some of the, when people start opening up to you and, and we start hearing more and more.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
But before we get on with that, we have a Haddox report.
And now, professional UFO investigator on special assignment with Paranormal Road, it's William Haddox with the Haddox Report.
This is William Haddox with the Haddox Report, and I've got an interesting case to bring to you this week. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to Paranormal Road for having me back on for another season. This case comes out of Columbus, Ohio. This was sent in through the reporting center, which can be found at Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. This was sent in to me on the night of October the 13th from Columbus, Ohio. This was right around the 270 Morris Road area. And it was very interesting. This was one of those cases that had me just as confused as the witness. So it was reported as an egg-shaped craft with red and white lights and what appeared to be wings, one coming from each side. The craft was spotted northeast, traveling southwest. So upon doing some investigating, I was able to come to the conclusion and actually prove it through flight radars and other images that what the craft actually was a children's hospital helicopter. And that caught me off guard as well. I've looked at many cases that were helicopters, and all were fairly similar. But what caught me off guard with this particular case, when I looked at an actual photo of the helicopter, is it has retractable landing gear. Most do not. And on each side where the landing gear is are two little flaps that open up so that the landing gear can be stored. Well, this particular craft was on its way to land. It was about 2,500 feet in altitude, so each one of those doors were open, and that gave the appearance of a small wing on each side. Red and white lights, I confirmed with the helicopter manufacturer that those are standard lights that are required by the FAA. Also, a green light is also required, but not always visible depending on the angle at which you're looking at the craft. So very interesting to find out, what it was. Like I say, I get a lot of these reports, and yes, many of them, I've got a fairly decent idea of what it is almost right away. But there are cases like this that really stumped me until I looked farther into it. And for those of you that are not aware of the UFO Reporting Center, maybe are new to the podcast, wanted to give a little bit of a quick background since it is a new season of Paranormal Road. I've always had an interest in things UFO related, and my grandfather, who had passed away about a year ago, is what really drove my interest to want to look into it farther. He spent almost 20 years in the National Guard, the Ohio National Guard, and had a UFO experience on one of our bases, not too far from where I'm located now. It was Rickenbacker, at that time called Lockburn Air Base. It was a strategic air command and a very important base at the time. It's mostly a commercial airport now with a squadron of Black Hawk helicopters and a refueling wing. But he had mentioned seeing a Roswell-style craft, your typical round disc, actually land on the runway one morning when he was there. And that always struck me. He said that the biggest thing that caught him off guard, aside from the craft itself, was the warning that went out over the PA system shortly before the craft landed, that if you lived on the base, you was to go inside the barracks and do not look outside. If you didn't live on the base, you was instructed to leave, to go home. So they were definitely expecting something. So he said the craft ended up landing, and people that he had never seen before and insignias he had never seen kind of swarmed the craft, and he didn't see much more after that. He wasn't close enough to pick up great detail, but he was very familiar with the base, which is one of the reasons he was there. He had ran lab reports and things from other parts of the state back and forth. And since he was so familiar with the base, because his last duty while he was there was driving the staff car around, more or less being a chauffeur for all the higher-ups, taking them where they needed to go. So quite familiar with the area. And upon hearing that story more than once growing up, that is what really piqued my interest to want to look into this farther and try to figure out, what people are actually seeing. Now, granted, most cases have, an earthly explanation, but there's always that chance that something will come through. So if anybody has anything that you have seen and would like to report, again, the website is Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. And I want to stress, too, that you do not have to be from Central Ohio to submit a report. You could submit one from anywhere worldwide. Confidentiality is number one with me. And I guarantee upon submitting a report, you will get a reply back from me within 24 hours. Generally within a few minutes, but within 24 hours I will be in touch. I have a Facebook page as well, which you can find at the bottom of the homepage of the reporting center. Anything that's been sent in so far, pictures, videos, drawings, all of that is also there. So again, I want to thank Paranormal Road for having me back on for another season, and I look forward to everything they have to bring. And if anything comes up, I will definitely send it out to all the listeners there to let everybody know what is being reported in my area, as well as everywhere else. And as always, keep looking up.
And thanks, William, for that Haddox report. Now we're going to move forward with the show, and we're going to go to Nance Warren from Buckeye Bigfoot.
And we have Nance Warren from Buckeye Bigfoot on the line with us. Hey, Nance, how you doing?
I'm good, David. How are you and Randy today?
I'm great, Nance. Yeah. How are you? Long time no hear from.
I know. It's good to be back. Thank you for having me.
We talked, I think back in September about our experience at the campground. And we have on the show later today, we have a gentleman that's from the campground who actually saw these red glowing eyes. So with your research and so much involved with Bigfoot and with your show, have you come across stories of red glowing eyes?
Yes, I have. And they're not as common as I would actually expect them to be, but they are definitely out there. They are definitely seen. I'm not sure if it's a whole different type of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I really, I don't have enough information to say, but they are definitely being seen, and people are adamant. These are eyes that glow. These are not eye shine.
Right. I've heard that on several podcasts where people were insistent that this was not reflective eye shine, that they literally were glowing red eyes. And that is so hard to wrap your head around, that a biological creature has that ability to do something like that.
I agree. And, some of the more compelling information that I've gotten are coming from seasoned hunters who are well acquainted with every type of eye shine of an animal out there to be seen. And if they tell you, no, that was not eye shine, what I saw was eyes that were glowing, I tend to listen to them. They know what they're talking about out there.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the way we feel about it when we interview people who say they've seen Bigfoot. And we've had a couple of really compelling stories from hunters and people who are very credible.
I would agree. Recently I had one from a person who's been bird watching for over 30 years. They've been everywhere. And they have incredible, I believe she said they were Vector Razor UHD field glasses. And so I looked up the specs on them. They are amazing. So if she says that's what she saw through those glasses up close, I'm tending to believe her. She's seen everything in 30 years out there in those woods. So again, I don't want to use the term street cred, but that's kind of what it's like.
Yeah. Now, do you have a story that you could share with our listening audience of somebody that contacted you regarding the glowing red eyes?
I do, actually. He and I worked together. We shortened it quite a bit because the original story was pretty wordy. But if you'd like, I can go ahead and read it for you.
Absolutely. Now, was this encounter in Ohio?
Yes, it was. He actually prefaces the story that he lives next to a wildlife reserve here in Ohio, but he didn't want to say exactly where. So I think for his privacy concern.
Sure. Okay, well, I'm excited to hear this story.
Okay. I live next to a wildlife reserve here in Ohio. I do not wish to say exactly where, but I will say it's interesting to say the least. The first occurrence was in 1981. We had all gone to bed, but I hadn't fallen asleep yet. I lay there, and an overpowering feeling came over me to look out my bedroom window. The window overlooked the hillside and our rolling farmlands. But to my shock, looking straight in the window was one giant, almond-shaped, red glowing eye. I was trying to understand what it was when the eye blinked slowly, and then a second eye became visible with it. They continued to stare in at me through the window. The glowing eyes blinked several times. My fear grew, and I began to scream. But before the adults in the house could get into the room, the eyes at the window disappeared. The adults looked around outside, but said they found nothing. The second time that I saw them was later in the same year, and it was shortly after the harvest, and the moon was full and bright, lighting up the dark night almost like noon during the day. I looked out the window on this evening, and I saw not one, but two of the giant figures walking away from our house. They were rather close still yet, close enough that I could clearly see the outline of both creatures in the bright moonlight. I saw the long arms as they walked, and the distinctive cone heads, and those devilish red eyes that glowed. Being from a devoutly religious family, the only thing I could associate having glowing red eyes such as that was a demon, and since that first sighting, that is what I had come to think of them as. As I caught sight of them that night, one of them also caught sight of the shadow that I cast out onto the ground from the light inside the house. The one on the right turned at the hips, looked back at me in the window, and then swiveled back to the one on its left and nudged it on the arm, the same way we do to get a friend's attention without making a big noise. Now both of them stopped, turned at the hips, and looked back at me with two sets of glowing red eyes. It was only in my later years that I have come to recognize that these creatures are better known as Bigfoot. Most report eye shine, but I tell you clearly, what I saw was not eye shine. I am an experienced hunter. Those eyes glowed in an unnatural way for an animal creature, like no other animal that I've ever seen, and I pray that I never see them again.
Wow.
And that's odd that you hear, for me anyway, to hear that the eyes were that pronounced.
Yeah.
That you could, I mean, I've heard even, wasn't it Shelley, Dave, at the campground that
last
said
year
she got up in the night to go out, and of course, you know, in a tent you go outside to go to the bathroom, and she said she looked directly into the woods because she heard something, and she saw glowing eyes, but she said they weren't red. They were like an amber color, I think she said.
Yeah, amberish. But she said they were tinted a little red, but she said they were dark amber. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the first time I've heard anything that clear in your story about the red eyes like that.
You know, and I did actually speak with the gentleman, and, you know, I was confirming whether or not this was a childhood memory that perhaps got superimposed or grew in his mind. And he was emphatic that no, this is not at all a childhood memory that was grown upon. It really happened like that. He's never seen it like that since. He thinks he has seen other Bigfoot from a distance, but during the day. And of course, there were no glowing eyes at that point. Again, I reiterated with him over and over, this was not eye shine, and he was adamant. No, this was not a natural animal eye shine.
See, and that makes you wonder. It brings you to the question again. And we hear this all the time: is Bigfoot, you know, the woo factor? Is it spiritual? Is it something paranormal, or is it just a flesh and blood creature? When I hear eye shine, I have to step to the woo factor. In my mind, that's not natural.
Right. Okay. And you said eye shine, not the eye glow,
well, yes,
right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, the glowing eyes. That is definitely not natural.
No, I would tend to agree with that. And up until this last year, I've always, whenever I've read or encountered anything with a true eye glow, I've always put it more towards, I won't say the woo factor, but I'm going to put that over to the side of the dog man. I get and have seen more dog man reports with glowing unnatural eyes than I have actual Bigfoot. But at the same time, I don't want to question people what they've seen. If they say it was a Bigfoot with glowing eyes, then it was a Bigfoot with glowing eyes.
Now, have you received a lot of reports of the balls of light or the orbs preceding or after an event experience?
I've had two. I've had only 2. One was up in, was it Ravenna, Ohio, I believe it was. The other one was out west. I cannot recall. I want to say it was Colorado.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But again, these were reports that were taken from memory.
Right.
So even they were a little ambiguous on the size of the ball. The only thing I heard, both of them, they said that the balls were very fast moving. One had white light and the other had what Randy just described with the eyes, more of an amber with touches of red. So I'm not sure if they're really related or not. This gentleman didn't have any of that before this.
Yeah, that's just, again, the whole subject matter is just so fascinating.
We're actually going to have on our show, too, today, we're going to have Amy Boo back on. And Amy's been all over. She just got back from Texas. They had a Bigfoot convention in Texas, and she was out there. And we're going to run that by her, too, with your story and see what her feelings are on the red eyes, too.
Yeah, because, well, she was part of the group that was at the campground, and she witnessed the red eyes. But at the time, she was having a hard time figuring. She thought maybe it was a car in the distance coming through the trees because she was unfamiliar with the campground. And where they were at and where they were looking is nothing but deep, deep forest. There is no road over there, so there's no explanation for it.
And let me clarify. This occurred the weekend that I was possibly going to try to be up there. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Doggone it, I missed it.
I know. Well, we're going to have to definitely have you out next this coming summer.
It's turned out to be pretty interesting that the more we've talked about it and the more people have come forward out there saying that they've heard,
they're opening up,
screams and weird knock noises and things from the woods out there, that some of the locals are saying, well, yeah, there's been talk of Bigfoot sightings out here for years, and we didn't know that until we were out there and heard stuff ourselves. So it's pretty interesting.
I can believe that. I've had a lot of people for years, they've heard and they've, heard all kinds of things out there, and they always said, well, I didn't know what it was, so I just wrote it off to this or to that.
Right.
And then they find out that actually there have been sightings in that area, and they start to put pieces together, and shazam, there you go.
Yeah,
it's mind-blowing.
Even the woman that runs the campground, she had a couple of weird experiences herself that, of course, she blames us. She's like, oh, I never knew anything about Bigfoot until you guys came along. But she actually told us a story where she mows the lawn down in a low area that they use for tent campers.
At the woods, yeah.
And she said she heard something that sounded like a big tree knock or a big,
crash,
something hitting the tree. She said she came back the next day because it scared her, and she just left the area. She came back to finish mowing the next day, and there was a big, club-type branch leaning up against one of the trees. And she said that was not there the day before. So she's pretty convinced now stuff's going on, too.
But she won't admit it's a Bigfoot.
Yeah. No, she still, she still won't say Bigfoot. She just says something.
A lot of people are hesitant to actually call it what it is.
Right, right. You don't want that crazy label. So, hey, Nance, tell our listeners, about your show and how they can get in touch as far as if they have any encounters or things they'd like to share with you.
Yes, I actually have a YouTube channel called Buckeye Bigfoot. I have a website at www.buckeyebigfoot.com. And both of them, my goal has been from the beginning to collect different stories and share them with people. Now, the aim has been for a lot of reasons, but this actually started because I actually had a family member who I loved and trusted many years ago, back in the 80s. Both she and her husband had an encounter, and it was kind of frightening in parts. I knew these people, and I knew they were as straight as an arrow all the rest of the years I ever knew them in my life. And they took a lot of ridicule from the family and within and without. And I chose to believe them, and it was one of the first stories I put on my channel. The goal was I also want people to not be afraid. It is, I think we discussed in the very first interview back in January that you had with me, and we discussed it's almost like a therapy for them, because no one believes them, and to simply be given a little bit of credibility and to be given a voice is an awful lot. So that's what I do. My channel, I collect all the encounters, originally just from Ohio, but I'm getting them from everywhere. So for the last several months, they're from all over, and I've had some from outside the United States as well. So, if you have an encounter and you'd like to have it profiled, just send an email at I apologize. Send it in an email to contact@buckeyebigfoot.com, and I'll get it up on the air and share it with everyone.
Wonderful. If you have not heard Nance Warren on Buckeye Bigfoot, I highly, highly recommend that show. It's absolutely awesome.
I can't stop listening. When I turn it on, it's like, and the way you narrate, Nance, it's like captivating. It's like, oh my God, keep going.
And I have to admit, my favorite stories are the ones in Ohio because it's near and dear to us. So every time, and when you tell a story from Ohio, I'm thinking, okay, was that Vermilion? Was that, up here? Was it Southern Ohio? So it's just, again, a wonderful, wonderful show.
And we want you to come out to the campground next year if the Corona craziness lets up a little bit. And maybe you can have a story of your own to tell.
Yeah.
That would be good because everyone asks me, and I have to say truthfully, no, I've never heard a sound. I've never heard a wood knock, no whooping, never had a sighting.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to come out and play with a Bigfoot, so maybe I'll get lucky.
It would be good to get you up there sometime when we have Amy Boo out here.
Oh, yeah.
Amy Boo is she's a delight to hang out with, and she's so cool about it. It's amazing talking to her and hearing her stories.
I would love to meet her, and I would love to hear her stories. I've heard some other interviews with her, and I'm kind of sad that I'm not getting an interview with her today, but time scheduling being what it is for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe some other day I would love to meet her, and just hanging out with you guys, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
We'd love it.
And listeners also, too, Nance Warren has been so wonderful to read our listener stories. So if you've had an experience and you would like it told, send your email to us at paranormalroadpodcast@gmail.com. And we can get that to Nance, and she can read your story, and we'll put it on our listener story segment.
I would love to do that. Please send them in because I do love reading stories from all sorts of encounters.
Well, thanks, Nance, again for joining us on the Paranormal Road.
Thanks, Nance.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you, Randy, for having me back. I really appreciate it. You guys are a load of fun.
The state of Ohio is filled with mysteries, unsolved murders and unexplained disappearances, lost treasures, missing shipwrecks, strange phenomenon, and things that go bump in the night. We explore them all at Ohio Mysteries, a podcast dedicated to the great questions that obsess us in the Buckeye State. I'm your researcher and storyteller, Paula Schleiss.
And I'm your co-host, Steve Yoder. We invite you to join us every week for a new episode about a mystery that's never been solved. You'll find stories that seem vaguely familiar, others that have become legend, and still, more you've never heard of. Subscribe to Ohio Mysteries on your favorite podcast app.
Or visit us at ohiomysteries.com for direct links, as well as photos, videos, news clippings, and more related to each and every episode. And who knows, maybe together we'll find some missing pieces to these puzzles on Ohio Mysteries.
And welcome, Amy, back to the Paranormal Road. It's been a long summer, and we're excited about Season 3.
Hey, guys. I'm excited about it, too.
Hi,
it's
Amy.
been a long time. Hi.
Yeah, we're finally back. It's, the summer it just flew by when we finally got to enjoy some of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great. You got to come out, and we hung out, and it was pretty cool. We got some neat...
It was...
neat stuff to talk about.
Yep, I love your campground. It was so much fun and welcoming and just really nice people. So I had a good time.
Yeah, we did too. It was just a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, we love it there.
But we're talking about the glowing red eyes versus eye shine. And, that is the big debate. And when you guys went out on that little night expedition into the woods, Randy and I did not go along. But maybe you could tell our listeners on what you guys experienced.
Yeah, it was really strange. People ask me if I've ever had weird things happen, and occasionally I do. I don't know how to explain it, but basically we all went out in the woods that night, a small group of us, and when we were going along, I had never been there before, so I don't feel comfortable really gallivanting off into a woods that I don't know where you could fall over a ledge or,
right.
There could be something there that you don't want to run into. So I stuck basically on the trail. And then when we got up to where it split, I wasn't sure which way to go. So we were there with a couple gentlemen that were more familiar with the campground and the surrounding woods than I was. So they kind of went up off to the left, and just for safety's sake, I just kept everybody in one area until we could figure out where to go. When I'm by myself, maybe I'm a little more adventurous, but when I feel a little bit of responsibility, maybe it's the teacher in me that comes out, and I'm like, okay, nobody go anywhere because I don't want you to get hurt. So we were just hanging around this one area in the woods, and it was so strange because these guys had gone off to the left, like I said, and then I saw over to the right and further away than I thought they would be these red lights, and it definitely wasn't eye shine like you would get from a normal animal because growing up we would be up at our cabin in Pennsylvania and we would go spotting. We call it deer spotting, and we weren't doing it to hunt, which I think is illegal. We just wanted to see the animals. So, you shine your flashlight and see if something shines back. So it wasn't anything like that. This looked like computer equipment to me. It looked like, almost like laser dots or something. And I was trying to make sure there weren't radio towers in the, in the
right.
distant, in the distance, and that I wasn't really getting the distance correct. But no, these were closer than that, and they were horizontal. So I do kind of see how Shane thought that they looked like eyes, because there were two of them.
Right.
But to me, they looked electronic. And so I thought that the guys had gone to the left somehow, quickly got there and over to the right. But when we called out to them, their voices were definitely from the left. It wasn't them. And there wasn't anybody else from our group that it would have been. So it was very strange. And, I'm always a bit skeptical of things. And I'm thinking, well, is it somebody else out there? What is it? And then we tried to go a little closer with the flashlight to see if there were any reflectors that just were very piercing. Couldn't find anything that would explain it. So yeah, that was a weird one, and I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and for shortly on the show too, we're going to have Dennis, who is a seasonal camper at the campground. Now, he was not involved that weekend with going out in the woods or anything like that. And he actually approached us in September wanting to know what he saw, because he was sitting, his campsite sits on the hill that overlooks the Tent Valley area. And he was out there one night and he said, I'm telling you, I saw red glowing eyes coming from the woods. And he really seemed to be genuinely freaked about it. So I find that
weird.
Yeah, that he would see them after you guys had your experience.
And the way his campsite sits, and he would have looked, would have been probably about the same direction that you saw something. So it was towards the woods, because the back of his campsite looks out over that wooded area where you guys were walking.
Yeah. We're jealous
Really
of their
strange.
campsite. It's gorgeous. They have a beautiful view, but it does literally look right into that general area. Now, we walked that, Randy and I, in the daytime because I've never been in the woods. I mean, we just kind of...
And I'm not going in the woods at night, so
No.
Bigfoot or not, I'm not going back there.
But we walked it in the day, and I was surprised. It goes, I mean, it's way back there, but after you cross the creek, there's actually a ridge hill that you go up to. And then after that, to the left is a large overgrown farm field. So I have no idea what those lights are. They could not have been tail lights of a car.
Yeah, they weren't close enough to a road.
Oh, no, they for sure weren't taillights. They weren't moving like that. They were just steady, like I said, you know, I could see why he was saying eyes because it looked like something was staring, but nothing, it didn't blink, you know, like an animal or anything like that. I really thought somebody was standing there with some kind of equipment.
Now, have you taken any reports, you know, in your investigation describing glowing eyes?
I have, and I actually had another experience like that.
Really?
It was like one of my other weird things. I was at an expedition in Kentucky, and I was out in the woods with my friend Brian.
Please don't tell me it was Land Between the Lakes.
No, it was not. It was not. Thank goodness.
Okay, yeah.
She's still here to tell about it, so I guess not.
No, but like part of our group had gone up further than us, and we stayed back in an area where the year before there was some activity right in this spot. And one of the researchers the year before had said she'd seen Bigfoot, you know, a figure right there on the road, and that there had been some other strange things. So we're like, oh, I want to stay here.
Not.
So, so we sat there a while, and I don't remember anything really happening while it was just the two of us sitting there chatting and just waiting for Bigfoot to show up. But when the others came back, we all sat down. Like there were some logs some people sat on. I just sat down on the ground, and we were all just sitting in the dark. And I'm remembering this as best as I can, but somebody asked where one of the guys was, and I said, he's right there. And everybody, you know, you could hear them, you know, kind of rustling. And he said, no, I'm not. And he was, behind me. And I said, he's right there, but you could tell from my voice, like where I was going. And I said something like over by that tree, and he came from behind me, and he's like, no, I'm not. And this, you know, this is something I'm not necessarily proud of, because usually I keep my cool a bit, but it startled me so much that he wasn't where I thought he was that I put my light on, and there was nothing there. And it really freaked me out, because the reason I thought he was there was I saw these red lights, and I thought it was his equipment again. It looked like his equipment. He had like a camera thing that he was carrying around. It had these red, like
LED lights.
LED lights,
yeah.
Right. So I swore it was him. Like it didn't even cross my mind that it wasn't him. And there was nothing there. So again, we all looked, and some other people had seen lights too. So it wasn't just me.
So looking back and comparing, like at Sean Acres, was it that same type of light that you saw?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, very similar. So we looked for reflectors. We thought, well, maybe it was somebody else further away with headlamps on, like red headlamps. But the way that the ridge was up higher, you wouldn't have seen anybody down below. And we did experiments trying to see, but it was kind of close to me. I swore like he was standing there with that equipment, and he wasn't. So it was weird. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
But no, I've had it before, and I have taken reports from people that have said they've seen eye shine, which would blink and looked more like real eye shine, and these weird lights.
The interview we had earlier today with Nance Warren, she talked about the story that she read, and that the person was very credible. And she said that he actually mentioned that he could clearly see that it was a red eye, that it was not eye shine, and that he was even more convinced when he saw it slowly blink. And then he said,
"Yeah, that would be creepy."
Yeah. I wouldn't have waited. He actually said he saw the other eye open. It's like, I would have never been there long enough to see that other eye open. But the first blink and I was gone. But he described it, and she said it was compelling to hear him tell her that. So
yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. Shelley actually at the campground had seen something too, but what she saw, she said, was more amber colored, but she said definitely looked like eyes coming from the woods directly where you guys saw stuff. So I'm thinking there's a lot of stuff in those woods back there.
Yeah.
And the weird thing, that weekend, it was ungodly hot. And what I thought was really strange that weekend, and my son kind of pointed that out to me afterwards, he said, Dad, he said, there were no insects. He said you couldn't hear frogs chirping. He said there were no crickets. He had a hard time actually going to sleep in the tent because he said it was just too quiet. And
it was very quiet and very stifling hot. And in that woods, we were all like, it felt like you couldn't breathe very well in there. It was so hot.
Yeah. And it's weird because the very next weekend, the insects were deafening, between the cicadas.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy.
And it's like, what is it? I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. Do insects, when it gets too hot, do they just say, nope, too hot today to chirp? Or, I'm not cricking today, it's too hot. I don't know. But it was weird because that weekend it was dead silence, deafening. Just weird. But
just creepy in its own way, yeah.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, we also, you just got back from a very exciting trip. Can you share with our listeners?
Yes, I was so excited. I went out to the Texas Bigfoot conference, and I wanted to go out to Craig Woolheater's conference for years.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, it's either the same weekend as Creature Weekend here in Ohio, which I have been going to for a few years and then helping with the last couple of years. It's either that same weekend or around the same time. And this year, Creature Weekend was canceled due to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to go out to the Texas one. And I'm hoping that there won't be the same weekends anymore because I really want to do both. But, it was so much fun. So I flew into Shreveport, Louisiana. And I knew I was going to get there late at night, even though later than I thought. So I had a hotel for that night. And since nothing was really going on until later in the afternoon that next day, I decided to drive to Falk, Arkansas to see Boggy Creek.
Wow.
Because, you're right there. I was within 50 minutes of it. I'm like, I have to go. So I didn't get to spend nearly as much time as I'd like there, but I went to the Monster Mart and, saw they have a little museum in there, which was really cool. It's just one of those, bucket list items.
Right.
And then I had driven over Boggy Creek on my way into town because there was just a little sign, and it was all dried up. So I'm like, I wanted to see the swampy, creepy one from the Legend of Boggy Creek back in the 70s. So somebody told me where I should go that I could, see a little bit more of that with the, the Spanish moss and all the creepy trees and stuff. So I spent a little bit of time walking around in there, and I didn't get to see any Falk monster, but I did have a fun time.
Nice.
So went there, and then I headed over to Jefferson, Texas, and I just had such a great time. I've been to quite a few conferences now, but this one was, it was smaller than normal because of COVID again. They had to, have social distancing and less people, and I think at least 50% of the capacity. But they did a good job with that. And it was very homey though, like very welcoming. The people were great. A lot of people I knew from Facebook but had never met in real life. And it was awesome. Really, really, really great time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm jealous. That sounds like such an awesome weekend.
No, I want to go back, and I want to go to the Falk Festival they have every year, I guess. It's next weekend, but next weekend I have another event, or I think I would have gone back.
Yeah. Now, you have not actively investigated in Texas, right?
No, that's my first time in Texas.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear that
First time there.
the Bigfoot there's several areas where they're highly active and, from my
Yeah.
understanding, somewhat aggressive. So if you do investigate there, please be careful.
I will.
And they
It
say
was
everything is bigger in Texas too, so it's
Yeah,
probably going to be an
right?
extremely
Big-
huge
will be.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. It was just so different than I thought. And I know I was only in one little tiny part of Texas, but out near Caddo Lake. And I'm thinking in my head, tumbleweeds, all that kind of thing. Although I did see a whole bunch of armadillos, which was fun along the freeway. But it was a lot of pine trees. I had read a book when I was a little girl where the main character lived in the piney woods of Texas. And so I was like, here I am. I'm in the piney woods. And it was beautiful, and I could totally see why there are sightings out there.
Yeah, and it seems like
everywhere.
they say they're very active in pine areas.
Yeah, the pine trees, the water, the swamps, it's perfect for
Yeah.
a big old scary monster.
Well, Amy, how can our listeners get in touch with you? Should they, have something to share or questions for you, or ask for an investigation on their property?
Yeah, well, you can always find me on Facebook, AMY, and my last name is spelled B as in boy, UE. So if you're on Facebook, you can always contact me there. But I'm also at bigfootamy@gmail.com. So Bigfoot, just how you'd spell it, AMY @gmail.com. And I would love to hear from people. I do investigation.
That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother one.
Amy and Doo-Doo. It always comes up somehow,
Yep.
doesn't it? You always
Yep.
get it in there
Well,
somehow, Amy.
I've had a couple of those this summer, but that's definitely another stuff. But please get in touch with me. I investigate a lot in Ohio and Pennsylvania, but I travel a lot, so give me a good story, a good sighting, and I'll try to make it there.
Wonderful.
It doesn't take much of a reason to get you to go, does it?
No, it does not.
Well, we can't wait until we have your first boo report of the season.
Yay!
You have anything in mind? Or you want to keep it a
Maybe I do.
surprise?
Maybe I'll do the Falk monster. I don't know.
Oh yeah, perfect. Absolutely
Yeah.
perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, well, Amy, we will let you go. Thank you so much. It's always good to have you on the Paranormal Road.
And we're so glad to hear back from you and get through the summer and get on the Paranormal Road again.
Yes, me too. It'll be fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And we have Dennis on the line, who is a seasonal at Shawn Acres Campground. Now, we wanted to bring him on to have him convey his story, because what he experienced happened a month after what Amy Boo and Shane Grove experienced. Dennis, welcome to the Paranormal Road.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell what happened that night? I mean, it's still, when you came over to our campsite and told us, what you experienced, it was just like, are you kidding me?
Well, me and the family were sitting out by the fire. We were cooking s'mores over the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to look out towards the lower pavilion there, out in the bottom there, and it's like, I just kind of was caught off guard because I seen two bright red, almost like LED lights looking back at me from the wood line. And I'm like, no, this ain't happening. And my wife's looking at me because I'm got this puzzled look on my face. And she's like, what? I said, I just seen two eyes. And she looks at me and she's like, okay. And it was just for a matter of seconds, and it seemed like then it just disappeared and it was gone.
Almost kind of like when you made eye contact with it, or whatever it was, it cited, oops.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's like, no, you ain't supposed to see me type deal, and it was gone.
And it's so weird because when you came down and you guys are taking the walk and you told us about that, and we brought up, the Bigfoot group that was there with Amy Boo, and told you that you had no idea that they experienced and saw the same thing.
No, nothing, no clue.
And what I thought too was interesting is what you just said, that it looked like LED lights. And in our interview a little bit earlier today with Amy Boo about that same thing that she saw, she mentioned that it almost looked like a bright LED kind of light,
or like
too.
Computer lights or something. Yeah.
So, I mean, the similarities there for happening, the time period apart is kind of interesting too.
And the other thing is, where you saw them and told us about is exactly the area where they saw them.
Right. It was like she was describing the area of the woods that she saw it, and that's about the direction that you saw it, because you said down near the pavilion, and that's where she saw it, back in that area. So I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yeah, and then the next morning, because we left the chairs where they were. The next morning, I actually went out and sat in that chair and tried to reenact it. And looking out there, I could see nothing that would have reflected or anything that would have done that. There was nothing there.
Yeah, because that's deep into the woods.
And that's the same.
Right.
That's the same thing Amy said. She said that she actually turned her headlamp that she wears on and looked in that direction to see if there was any kind of reflectors or anything that would have, lit up bright like that. And she said there was nothing.
And the weird thing too is with them, it's almost the same thing. When they saw it, they were perplexed, and within a matter of seconds, they were gone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
Very strange.
Sean Akers, it's like, I don't know. Our listeners are going to get sick of hearing us talk about Sean Akers, but it's kind of like interesting. I mean, you guys have had other experiences out there other than seeing the red eyes.
Oh,
too,
go ahead. Put them on the spot, Randy.
Yeah, I'll put you on the spot. You've had other things happen out there too, haven't you?
Right. I mean, there's been other things out there, and my wife has heard the tree knocks and that too, but I've seen the lights and I haven't heard the tree knocks, but she's heard that. So, and there's other things happening around my camper too. So
it's definitely an awesome place.
Yeah, it's like we could just turn it into that paranormal campground.
That sounds good.
I don't know what Deb would think about that, but we could push it. It might work.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, as far as what we experienced last year, the screaming that we heard, and then, some of the events this year, there's something going on out there. What it is, I don't know.
And it's cool. We've got people, the Nance Warren that we interviewed earlier too. She wants to come out there now. She's like, I want to come out there and look around too. I've never really seen a Bigfoot or anything like one, but I want to come out there and look for one.
So,
right.
Well, Dennis, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your experience.
Yeah, it was awesome to hear, and it was good seeing you last night. You and Christy both. Tell her hello and stop being so shy and talk to us on the radio.
I'll tell her that. Quit being shy.
Yeah.
And listening to them tell that story and being out at the campground, they're just amazing. Dennis and Christy. Christy, of course, she's a little shy. She wouldn't talk. But Dennis told us the story. Christy has experienced some things out there, too. And that's why we like Sean Akers so much. They're just some incredible people out there.
Excellent people. And I think that just about wraps up our show for the first show of the season. We want to thank our listeners, all of you, for tuning in to the Paranormal Road. And the best thing you can do to help us out, if you like us, please give us a rating in the comments and the rating and reviews on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. Also, check out our Facebook page, Paranormal Road.
And share us with your friends. If you like what you hear, share it. Share our link to your friends, get them on board, and have them give comments. We want to know. Tell us what you think of the show. If you've experienced something or there's something cool you want to know about, let us research it and talk about it on the show, or possibly get someone we can interview to tell you what your interest is.
And thanks so much again for tuning in to the Paranormal Road.